General Hospital spoilers tease that Maurice Benard has always been known as the emotional heart of General Hospital, both on-screen as Sonny and off-screen as a voice for mental health, stability, and loyalty to the show's legacy. But when he recently dropped an unexpected bombshell during a special episode of his State of Mind podcast, longtime fans were left reeling. In a reflective, at times cryptic monologue that veered into deeply personal territory, Maurice revealed that a seismic shift is quietly unfolding behind the scenes at GH. Without explicitly naming who or when, he confirmed that several key characters, cornerstones of Port Charles, will soon be making their final exits. And while this announcement wasn't presented as an official casting change or network mandate, it carried the unmistakable weight of emotional truth. As though Maurice himself had been grappling with the magnitude of the transition for months. This moment marks more than just another round of casting adjustments. It signals an emotional reset. A creative turning point that will reshape the tone, structure, and soul of General Hospital. For decades, the show has operated like a family, dysfunctional, passionate, and deeply intertwined. Now, with these unexpected departures looming, Maurice alluded to the fact that certain relationships may never be the same, both on and off the screen. What's even more compelling is that this revelation wasn't tied to the show's anniversary or a special event. Instead, it came during what appeared to be a heartfelt moment of vulnerability, a rare glimpse into the real-world pressures, conflicts, and choices that often remain hidden from public view. Maurice did not clarify whether the exits are voluntary, story-driven, or rooted in behind-the-scenes turmoil, but the subtext was clear: this is not just about actors leaving roles. It's about a paradigm shift, one of those rare moments in daytime television when everything begins to feel different. For fans, it raises a slew of haunting questions. Will Sonny himself be affected? Will legacy families like the Corinthos, Quartermaines, or Spencers face a sudden fracture? Will couples be torn apart, or long-lost enemies resurface in a final blaze of glory? The ambiguity of Maurice's confession only intensified the sense of looming dread and emotional uncertainty. What makes this revelation all the more jarring is that it comes at a time when the GH canvas is already overflowing with chaos. Daisy's kidnapping, Sasha's unraveling mental state, Drew's manipulative power plays, and Willow's descent into psychological fragility have already pushed the show's emotional boundaries. The potential loss of major characters adds fuel to a fire that's already burning hot. Maurice's words, tinged with sorrow and reflection, seem to suggest that General Hospital is preparing for a transformation not just in plotlines, but in tone, identity, and soul. Even more unsettling was his tone when he referenced the idea of letting go. Sometimes, Maurice said, we have to say goodbye, not because we want to, but because it's time for the story to grow. And sometimes, growth means pain. That one sentence ignited a firestorm of fan speculation. Could Sonny himself be headed for a temporary exit? Or is Maurice signaling that someone very close to Sonny, perhaps Carly, Jason, Nina, or Michael, will be leaving in a way that reshapes everything? Insiders have long whispered about contract disputes, narrative overhauls, and generational transitions. Still, to hear Maurice hint at them in such personal terms gave those rumors a powerful sense of gravity. This wasn't PR spin or vague network teases. This was the emotional admission of a man who has carried GH through decades of reinvention, heartbreak, and triumph. And now, it seems, he's bracing for a new chapter, one written not just in ink, but in loss. The shockwaves of this reveal continue to echo through the GH fanbase. Some are hopeful that new blood will invigorate Port Charles, that fresher characters will rise amid the departures. Others are devastated by the thought of losing familiar faces who have become part of their lives for years. But all agree on one thing: General Hospital is at a crossroads. And Maurice Benard just confirmed that the road ahead will be unlike anything viewers have seen before. The layers to this transformation are many. It's not just about who leaves, it's about what their departure unleashes. Secrets that were never meant to surface could erupt. Long-standing alliances could shatter. Characters who have always played by the rules may finally snap. And in the middle of it all stands Sonny, a character so tightly woven into the fabric of Port Charles that even a shift in his emotional world sends ripples through the entire show. Maurice's willingness to be honest, to let fans in on the emotional undercurrents driving some of these changes, makes the moment even more profound. He's not just preparing us for change, he's asking us to mourn with him, to brace ourselves for goodbyes we didn't see coming. And perhaps that's what makes this moment so powerful. It's not just a casting shake-up. It's a goodbye to a version of General Hospital that we've known and loved for years. Whatever happens next, one thing is certain, the countdown has begun. Secrets will unravel. Bonds will be tested. And before long, Port Charles will never be the same again. Maurice Benard has sounded the alarm, and all we can do now is watch, wait, and prepare for a season of transformation unlike any the show has ever faced. The news that Carlo Rada, who plays Sidwell, Steve Burton, who plays Jason, and Rena Sofer, who plays Lois, are all set to exit General Hospital has shaken the very foundations of Port Charles. These are not just familiar faces taking a bow. Their departures mark a seismic shift in the emotional, moral, and narrative architecture of the show. It is a collective exit that comes not with closure, but with a deafening silence, and in that silence, unease festers. These characters, each embedded deeply in the current fabric of major storylines, are more than supporting roles, they are pillars in the psychological and emotional scaffolding of the town. Their vanishing leaves behind more than plot holes, it opens emotional wounds, exposes raw truths, and unleashes a kind of chaos that no one is equipped to contain. Carlo Rada's Sidwell was never meant to be a comforting presence. He was a master manipulator. An enigmatic antagonist who operated in the gray space between legal strategy and criminal cunning. His presence evoked both dread and fascination. He knew too much, said too little, and always seemed several steps ahead of everyone else. The thought of Sidwell disappearing without a trace is more terrifying than his presence ever was, because it implies that he's not finished. He's simply gone underground. And if Sidwell has vanished from the public eye, that means his influence may now become even more insidious. Who will be his next pawn? What secrets will he leave buried just long enough to explode later? Steve Burton's Jason, in contrast, represented a stoic form of emotional gravity. For decades, Jason was the silent protector. The confidant, the loyal soldier whose presence brought a sense of control even in the most unhinged moments. His bond with Michael was more than familial, it was foundational. Now, with Jason's sudden departure, Michael is adrift. Already haunted by Daisy's near kidnapping, consumed by Sasha's emotional collapse, and burdened by the consequences of aligning with the wrong people, Michael is now without his moral compass. The timing of Jason's exit could not be worse. Just as Michael is spiraling, the one man who could have grounded him is gone. And worse, Michael may begin to believe that he was the reason Jason left, another weight on his increasingly fractured psyche. Then there is Rena Sofer's Lois, the fiery, soulful matriarchal force who re-entered the lives of Brooke Lynn and Gio just as their foundations were crumbling. Her presence was like oxygen for Brooke Lynn, an emotional balm that soothed decades of unresolved tension. And for Gio, her role was beginning to blossom into something truly transformational. She wasn't just a grandmother or a voice of reason, she was becoming a bridge between generations, a living link to the truth of Joe's lineage. Now, with Lois suddenly removed, Brooke Lynn and Gio are left more exposed than ever. And the timing is harrowing. As the truth about Rocco's parentage emerges and Britt's shocking return sends shockwaves through Port Charles, the absence of Lois's emotional clarity will be deeply felt. The triple departure is not random. It feels like a carefully coordinated act of narrative destabilization. One by one, the anchors are being pulled away, and the show is deliberately inviting a storm. What replaces them is not yet clear, but the emotional fallout has already begun. Sasha, still reeling from the trauma of nearly losing Daisy and increasingly convinced that Nellie is alive and manipulating her, now faces an even darker path. With no Jason to intervene, no Sidwell to battle, and no Lois to guide, she is more isolated than ever. The walls of the Quartermain mansion feel less like shelter and more like a haunted corridor of whispers, shadows, and paranoia. Michael, too, is now caught in a psychological vice. He is beginning to realize that he ignored every warning sign, dismissed every instinct, and now the cost may be Daisy's safety, Sasha's sanity, and his own redemption. He is watching everything he loves crumble, and the one man who could have helped him pick up the pieces, Jason, is gone. In his mind, Jason's departure might be interpreted not as happenstance, but as abandonment. Or worse, judgment. And that thought will corrode Michael's grip on hope. For Brooklyn and Gio, the timing is just as destructive. The revelation about Rocco, the trauma of the nurse's ball, the confrontation with Lulu, everything was building toward a reckoning that needed Lois to steady them. But now, that guidance is gone. Brooklyn, whose relationship with her son is already under siege, will feel the loss as both emotional and strategic. Gio, whose identity is crumbling beneath the weight of family secrets, will retreat further into anger, bitterness, and potentially dangerous rebellion. Even for those who haven't directly intersected with the departing characters, the shift is palpable. Carly, already facing renewed threats from old enemies, will interpret Jason's absence as another betrayal by the universe. Nina, already consumed by guilt and paranoia, will sense that the town is entering a new phase, one where truth is fluid. Alliances are fragile, and nothing can be trusted. Britt's return and the confirmation of Rocco's true parentage only deepen the sense that a new emotional plague is sweeping Port Charles, one born not of viruses or weapons, but of absence, silence, and loss. The psychological atmosphere in Port Charles has never felt heavier. These departures are not acts of closure, they are acts of war against the illusion of emotional safety. And as the town reels, as Michael and Sasha fall deeper into guilt and obsession, as Brooklyn and Gio brace for impact, and as Sonny senses that the world he built is coming apart at the seams, one truth becomes clear: this is the beginning of an entirely new chapter. One born not from resolution, but from the slow, methodical dismantling of everything that once held the town together. In the absence of Sidwell, Jason, and Lois, there is now only space for new obsessions, new betrayals, and new wars. The storm has begun, and no one is safe from what it will wash ashore. A new storm is brewing in Port Charles, one that signals not only a dramatic shift in the landscape of General Hospital, but the beginning of a deeper, more volatile reckoning for every character entangled in its web. This is not just a change, it is a transformation at its core. The foundations are cracking. The rules are being rewritten. What was once familiar is now uncertain, and what was hidden is beginning to claw its way into the light. The new wave of adjustments sweeping through the storylines is not merely logistical or procedural, it is emotional, psychological, and deeply personal. What we are witnessing is the unraveling of control, and in its place, a reigniting of chaos long dormant. At the heart of this transformation is a calculated upheaval. One engineered by forces both internal and external, both known and still cloaked in mystery. The recent exits of key players like Jason, Lois, and Sidwell have left behind a vacuum, a gaping silence where once there were voices of reason, confrontation, and connection. But nature abhors a vacuum, and Port Charles even more so. In that silence, a tempest of returns, reversals, and revelations is forming. Britt, long thought to be a chapter closed, is now back, and with her comes not only the truth about Rocco's origins, but the threat of a full-scale identity crisis for the entire Falconeri family. Her presence alone has already stirred emotional embers in Rocco, whose confrontation with Lulu has only deepened his disillusionment and fractured the fragile bond that once held their family together. Yet Britt is not the only ghost returning to haunt the living. Whispers of Nellie's survival have begun to spiral beyond rumor and into the realm of possibility. Sasha, barely holding on to her sanity, feels it first, not as fact, but as fear, as instinct. As the icy breath of someone she cannot see but knows is watching. Her nightmares are no longer just symptoms, they are premonitions. The suggestion that Nellie may have orchestrated Daisy's disappearance shatters any remaining illusion of safety, and plunges Sasha into an abyss of doubt and paranoia. But it is also an awakening, because if Nellie is alive, then nothing is off limits. Not the Quartermain estate. Not Michael. Not even Daisy. And Michael, once the golden son, finds himself flailing in the wake of one mistake after another. The man who thought he could build a family on foundations of compromise and controlled diplomacy now stands accused, in his own mind, of the gravest sin, ignoring the warnings, misjudging the danger, and letting his daughter fall into the hands of someone like Nellie. The guilt is not abstract. It is physical. It bleeds into every choice he now makes. And as he struggles to correct his errors, to protect what little he has left, he finds himself pulled into a direct confrontation with a resurrected Nellie, a confrontation not only of past and present, but of truth and delusion. This is not just a fight for Daisy's safety. It is a battle for Michael's soul. This chain of events has created a new kind of pressure cooker in Port Charles, one where trust is rapidly eroding, and where every new revelation threatens to trigger another collapse. The recent adjustments, once viewed as mere casting decisions or story pivots, now reveal themselves as a prelude to something far more deliberate, an orchestrated reset of the town's moral and emotional compass. And the shockwaves are far from over. Brooklyn, caught between her loyalty to family and her part in exposing Rocco's truth, now finds herself ostracized from both the Falconaries and her own Quartermain allies. Gio, still reeling from the revelation of his parents and his shifting place in the family hierarchy, turns increasingly inward, only to find that the truth about Rocco, Britt, and Lulu mirrors his own confusion and longing for clarity. The youth of Port Charles are no longer innocent bystanders, they are frontline soldiers in a generational war of identity, legitimacy, and legacy. Meanwhile, Sunny senses the cracks before anyone else dares to admit they're there. Jason's absence haunts him, not merely as a friend lost, but as a strategic vulnerability. Britt's return reminds him of alliances left unresolved. And Nellie? Nellie's rumored presence sends a shiver through the remnants of Sunny's once unbreakable empire. If she is indeed alive, Sunny knows the chaos she can unleash, not just on Michael, but on everyone who dares believe they've found peace. This is the storm. Not one of wind or water, but of memory, consequence, and return. The stage is now set not for redemption arcs or easy resolutions, but for a reckoning. Every adjustment, every narrative recalibration, every shocking exit, and every whispered return, is converging into a single, overwhelming reality. Port Charles is entering a new era of emotional warfare. And no one, no matter how deeply rooted, is safe from its pull. A storm of returns is shaking the very core of Port Charles as Britt, Holly, and Nellie all make their way back, each carrying secrets, rage, and unfinished business that promise to ignite a level of chaos not seen in years. This is not simply about characters returning to familiar ground, this is the resurrection of emotional wreckage. And with it comes a new, unhinged narrative arc that threatens to unravel every layer of stability left in the town. These aren't just homecomings, they are declarations of war. Each woman embodying a force of reckoning aimed at those who wronged them, betrayed them, or simply forgot they ever existed. What unfolds now is not a reunion, but a realignment of power, trauma, and vengeance. Britt's return is a punch to the gut of the Falconary family. Her reappearance not only confirms that Rocco is her biological son, but it also sends shockwaves through Lulu's fragile recovery and Dante's spiraling sense of paternal identity. The very foundation of Rocco's life has been shattered in one moment of raw truth. And Britt, no longer the woman she was, is now wielding that truth like a weapon. Her love for Rocco is real, but so is her bitterness for having been cast aside, her name erased, her motherhood denied. Her re-entry into Port Charles is not passive, it's calculated, and with every quiet glance and veiled comment, she's signaling that she's not here to plead for a place in Rocco's life. She's here to reclaim it, regardless of who stands in her way. Then there's Holly. whose sudden reappearance is a mystery wrapped in diplomacy. Her past with Robert, her secrets from the WSB, and her intricate connections to decades of corruption are all boiling beneath her elegant surface. She arrives not as a woman returning home, but as a wild card in a game everyone thought they'd already mastered. Her alliance with Scorpio is complicated by loyalties divided across continents and decades. And the moment she steps foot into the narrative again, 1,000 doors to espionage, betrayal, and clandestine warfare swing open. Holly is the kind of character whose presence changes the rules entirely, and her return signals the start of a far more dangerous storyline brewing just beneath Port Charles's domestic chaos. And finally, Nellie. The name alone is enough to ignite fear, anger, and a sense of unfinished dread. Her alleged death had been one of the few sources of peace for Carly, Willow, and Michael. But peace, it seems, was only ever an illusion. The mere possibility that she has returned, perhaps cloaked in shadows, already manipulating events from the margins, sends Sasha spiraling into paranoia and reawakens Michael's guilt with brutal force. If Nellie is alive, then all bets are off. The child switch, the gaslighting, the feud with Carly, the obsession with Michael, all of it returns with her. And Nellie doesn't return quietly. She doesn't believe in redemption. She believes in punishment. She believes in balance through destruction. Her very presence heralds a new level of psychological warfare, especially as Daisy becomes her most vulnerable target, a weapon she can use to harm Michael, Sasha, and even Carly in one calculated move. Together, these three women represent something far more dangerous than mere character development. They are manifestations of everything unresolved, everything repressed, and everything too dangerous to be left buried. Their stories are not simply reboots, they're detonations. What we are witnessing is the dawn of a new kind of storytelling within General Hospital, one where the past does not simply haunt, but actively invades the present. One where secrets don't stay dead. And neither do the women who carried them. This is a triple front storm that will spare no one. The alliances will fracture. The families will collapse. The truths once buried will force themselves to the surface with brutal consequence. And in the wake of Britt, Holly, and Nellie's return, there will be no such thing as safety, only survival.